Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of September 29th through October 5th, and also a look at just the outer stuff going on for the month of October. And not a real lot of stuff going on this week. Mercury is the main star, although Venus is conjunct the South Node, which is definitely going to bring some relationship stuff up. And then in October, Pluto going direct, Neptune sliding back into Pisces. So that's what I'm going to be mainly talking about this week. Probably won't be the longest one, that's for sure. And just a little business first, if you bear with me, the Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that I do on YouTube. It's available weekly. And if you have a YouTube account and you like what you see, I'd really like you to become a follower. And when you do that, don't forget to turn your notifications on so that you know when the blog is being posted. And I also like to remind people the blog is also available, same exact audio feed on podcasts. It was a podcast long before it was a YouTube channel. So just look up on your podcast app, Astrological Winds channel. There's a number of different sites that pick it up, and you can find the audio there. And that frees you up, to be able to, listen to the blog maybe when you're doing something else that you need your eyes for, like driving to work or whatever. Gives you some opportunity, because I know time is so valuable for all of us these days. So trying to fit things in sometimes can be hard. Also, Astrological Winds channel does have its own Instagram page. So if you want to become a follower there, the link will show up in your newsreel every week to the YouTube channel. And always can find the blog also on my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com. And there's a blogs tab on top. And it not only has this week's blog, but it has weeks and weeks of prior ones, monthly ones, the annual one for this year, any special blogs that I did during the year, which I may do one on the equinox actually this week, the equinox chart for DC. So if you're interested in political mundane stuff, look for that. The other thing on my website is all my professional services are listed. I've been a professional astrologer, trained for 7 years, been doing charts professionally for over 20 years. Would love to do yours, or a friend or someone that you know that's ready for that, your birth chart or your predictive or any other kind of work. Check the website out, the menu's there. I will get some more details on that later. I like to remind everyone, the blog is a free service, so I ask people to please pass the link along to somebody else. And if you can do that every time you listen to the blog, that'd be really cool. That's the way I get the blog to grow, is just word of mouth. I'm really into just the authenticity of finding the people who are really wanting to hear it. And it doesn't really matter to me how many that is. I just would like it to be, have people get a chance to hear that and filter it for themselves. So, so if you can do that, that'd be great. I really appreciate that as a pay it forward. If you do want to give a donation, you can always do that too. Currency donation. Also, I'd like to remind people, if you're not super familiar with the astrology terms, we're just trying to use astrology as a tool to make our lives like more in harmony, more in balance, more self-fulfilling, more like, self-empowering. So really what you need to know is just what the energy of the week is, so that you can work with that energy. So don't get stuck on the astrological terms, but I am going to mention them for most of the people in the blog who know some astrology and want to know why. All right, so this week's pretty mellow, you guys. Not a lot going on. Mercury's the main star, still in Libra, and it starts with on Wednesday with a square to Jupiter. Now, Jupiter, remember, is always going to bring benefits in, even when it's in a tougher aspect like a square. Jupiter is the greater benefit, and it will bring in some good stuff no matter what. And Mercury, is kind of like, a neutral planet. It's very objective and detached. So like when the two of them get together, even in a square, things really are usually pretty positive. It puts people in a very positive, optimistic enthusiastic frame of mind, a good attitude towards life. And a lot of it has to do with bigger vision right now, like seeing like a big picture coming into focus, and then being able to like take that vision and make plans around it, organize things around it. Now, one of the things that's really great about this, Mercury is, because of its detachment and objectivity, is a very tolerant planet, and Jupiter, because it always wants to take more in, is way tolerant, is the most tolerant planet. And so like, so this is a time where we're really open to new ideas from any source, different cultures, different people, all kinds of different sources. We're not, we don't get that judgment of shutting down and trying to restrict that stuff. So that's a really, really positive thing about this. And so that can really help feed, the things that Mercury likes to learn, and Jupiter does too. And when they're together, they're learning like secondary knowledge, the stuff that we already had the primary base on. But like, so we're really interested in gaining more, right? So we have the really good attitude about it. And incidentally, Jupiter is super strong too right now. If you remember, it's in Cancer, right? So that's a sign that it's exalted in. So it's very like open right now to receiving, and especially even on the emotional level, it's opening to receiving, which is something that Mercury isn't doing. So it's just like a really good attitude about learning, taking in more, getting a vision, making a plan that's far reaching effects for the future. Now, what is the problem with the square brings is we have the big plan, but we need to work on the details. And that's where Jupiter can be a little bit self righteous and arrogant and be like, well, what do you mean? Like I'm special, that I just get to like, get the whole package. And that's where Mercury can help us. And Mercury can be like, no, we have to work on the details. Now we have the big vision. Now we need to break it down into steps, into the parts that each thing needs to be taken care of to get to that point where the vision can come true. So that's going to be the trickiest part of this, because there's a tendency to want to just like overlook the details, kind of just blow through things based on the vision, right? And what that does is it gets us sloppy. And then that's how we appear, so we can appear. But for the most part, we have a really good attitude. And so like, even if we're shown, hey, there's some mistakes here, you got sloppy and stuff, usually our attitude is like, oh, okay, well, we'll correct those mistakes. So that's really good, so like anything that is an incorrect answer, you know you're usually willing to be flexible with this energy and be like, oh, okay, I can do that. Now remember too, Mercury is the ruler of business. So once again, one of the best places to put these bigger visions in and to work on those details is your business, what you're doing in your career, your business plans, things like that. It's an excellent place to focus this energy. Okay, so then Friday comes. Mercury does its second aspect of the week, but at the same time, Venus is conjunct the South Node in Virgo, and Mercury will be opposite Chiron. And I think these two, as always in astrology, they're going to work together. And this may not be the easiest weekend for relationships. If you'll remember, the eclipse, right, was Virgo energy in the eclipse, South Node. I said, really what these eclipses I think were trying to show us is to get away from all this judgment all the time of each other, how that creates like, an us versus them attitude, this criticism and stuff. And so now Venus, which is weak in Virgo, I talked about that last week, is going to conjunct that South Node, which is not usually a good thing for us. The South Node is energy we need to move away from. We need to get over it, or it's blocking us from where our true destiny lies, right? So that's what's going to be really tricky about this one, because it's showing basically that, the things that Venus rules, which is mainly relationships, right? So that's where this is really going to play out. But it can also have to do with money. It can also have to do with our creativity. It can also have to do with our attitudes about love in general. Um, it shows that we're being too judgmental here, and that, like, it's really hurting those things for us right now. It's showing that right now we're having a very difficult time adapting to situations in relationships or with money or with our creativity or in love that are occurring in our life, that, like, we're kind of stuck in a past pattern. And it's trying to show us this, it's trying to show us, hey, you know, this is something that's old, and it's based on judgments, and you're falling back into this, and it's poisoning these parts of your life, in particular relationships, um but it shows that, many of us may be unable to adapt to, like, things that are going on, and it can really damage that. People can be very disagreeable right now. They can be very judgmental of one another. They're not willing to please one another. They're not willing to meet each other halfway, you know so it can be particularly strong with Venus too in romantic relationships. A lot of criticizing that can go on, and that's where the Mercury Chiron will play into it too, where you literally, this aspect can have you or others use words as weapons, where you're really trying to push each other's buttons. You're trying, you're hurt and you're projecting that hurt out. This can create a lot of pain in relationships, you guys, especially close ones, Um, and it's interesting too, because from the Mercury Chiron aspect, really what Mercury is asking Venus and the South Node and even Chiron to do here is to become objective, like Mercury can be, become detached from it, and try to see both sides of the story, basically. That's what it's really trying to teach us, and that's what will help break the judgment cycle too of the Venus Virgo South Node, But it's going to be very difficult to do this, you guys, because this energy just wants to pull us back over and over into past patterning. I really think, when I think about this for us, what we really need to do is be aware of that. Like, when a relationship or when a money issue or when a creativity issue is being triggered, and we suddenly get into that judgmental, critical mind, like, if we can just take the Mercury part and detach and just be aware, hey, I'm falling into that. And then maybe we can start to see the pattern that's hurting us, the South Node Chiron part, that pattern, and then maybe we can stop that pattern, right? And that can help us start to heal these, relationships, or like come to relationships in a new way, North Node and Pisces way, even, like, just seeing, like, that there's unification even under different ideals and stuff. And so what I think is going to happen then is that's going to be what happens. Saturday's Mercury quincunx Saturn is going to be the hangover from that energy. This can leave us with some really heavy thoughts. Mercury quincunx Saturn. Basically, it's because fears have been triggered, and it's really, really hard to get out from under them with this energy. It can actually make us once again fall back into rigid, judgmental thinking patterns that are very, very difficult to break because they're so habitual. They might even be downloaded into our subconscious. It can get us very suspicious of others. and what they're really up to, and can give us a really cynical attitude towards others and what they're up to. So, and one of the things with this one too is like, even if you can control that energy, it's hard for other people too. So, this is one where if you know somebody that has a natural inclination to already be gloomy or depressed or negative, try to avoid them next weekend because they're going to drag you down. And really the best way to use this energy, I mean, this gives us really great discernment, careful thinking, So I would say if we can take this energy and apply it to the Mercury Jupiter ideas that we had earlier, that will help us work on the details. We can really be excellent workers under this Mercury Saturn energy. We can be very detailed. We can see all the little parts really well. We can be very careful with our thinking and discern things very easily, is my point. So I think that would be the best use for this energy. But this is not an easy assignment next weekend. I think relationships are going to be tested if we project this energy out. The best way is to really look at it inside ourselves and try to determine what the patterns are that have us fall into the judgment and cynical attitudes about others, and start to try to work away from that. Try to, like, understand that there's more than one way of doing things, that shouldn't be threatening you or bringing up fears in you, and try to make, start to like look, see if there's a way that you can get out of that cycle in any relationships that operate like that in your life. All right, October, not a real lot going on. Mainly Pluto going direct and Neptune's retrograde sliding back into Pisces. And right at the beginning of the month, the North Node semi square Pluto. This can show, yeah, it can tie into some of this energy, but it shows that we can be very frustrated with certain people or groups because of the influence they have in our lives. Like, when we get involved in relationships, either with people or groups, one of the things we have to understand is that we are now at the whims of those people and what they do, right? And even if it's not a direct effect on us, things they do can indirectly affect us even. And this energy shows that, certain relationships have become very burdensome and that you're suffering from them. And that can be group relationships, that could be individual relationships, but whatever they are, they're causing a lot of frustration. And so that's something that probably ties into this too. It's another aspect that's showing us, you need to look at this stuff and be more real about it, and like, and just realize, people's judgments, their attitudes can really affect you just because of your association with them. The other thing that this can indicate is sometimes a large common tragic event. So, some kind of natural disaster or something may hit around that time that can affect a lot of people at the same time. Now, on October 14th, Pluto goes direct on the very same day it went direct last year. This shows you how slow Pluto moves. Like, it's turning direct and retrograde literally on the same days from year to year many times. And so, at a different degree though this time, Pluto going direct at 2 degrees Aquarius. And I talked a lot in the annual blog about Pluto going into Aquarius, so I am not going to go into that again. It's still on the website and it will be for the rest of the year. So if you want to go all the way back to the blogs tab on my website, and you can get all the download about Pluto in Aquarius. But it's a really subtle shift because Pluto is such an outer planet. We don't really feel the retrograde to direct shift that much on a personal level. But what it will do is it's showing that a lot of the transformation that we're sensing in society is actually going on. That it's actually really going on right now, and that um, and unfortunately with Pluto, that means many times that there is like destruction that's involved in that. Remember, Pluto is always bringing transformation and change, right? And so what it's doing here is it's like, oh, changing things, but in a very, at times, violent, strong manner. And it can be very large scale changes. Pluto's a transpersonal planet. It's literally trying to change all of humanity at the same time. And, and it's an Aquarian type of energy, that's going on. So it can be really strong. But like I said, it's mainly a large, long scale societal change, and it eventually filters down into individual lives. But if you want to get the details about Pluto and Aquarius, go back to the annual blog. And then October 23rd, Neptune retrograde slides back into Pisces, where it will spend the rest of this calendar year. It will go direct in another month or so, and then will eventually go back into Aries in January next year. So Neptune gets to spend about 3 or 4 more months now in the sign that it has most affinity to, that it's most similar to, in Pisces. And so, once again, this is a time where we may look to our ideals, to our spiritual paths for inspiration, for imagination, and for changes that we want to see happen. And once again, we'll see this mainly in society, like really, unfortunately, with Pisces, a lot of times it creates an us versus them situation, which is what we saw happen over the 15 years or so that Neptune was in Pisces, the last 15 years, where it created a very strong us versus them polarization in the world, politically, culturally, religiously, on so many levels. But underneath it, Neptune dissolves boundaries, and so does Pisces. So it wants us to all realize that underneath everything, we are all united, but unfortunately, in these times, a lot of the energy is an us versus them energy. And so, like, this could cause people to get super idealistic again about what they believe in and create that us versus them energy. Or it can be like, no, we can break down barriers. We have things in common, and if we can work from those common ideals, we can create something that's beautiful for everybody. So that's the energy of the outer planets for October, and that's what I've got for this week's blog. Next week, we are going to get a full moon on Monday at 15 degrees of Aries. And also next week, Mercury is going to go into Scorpio. So those will be the two main things. Venus is active next week, too. So I'll be talking about Venus a bit. But that's what we got for this week. This is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I need you to send the blog link along to somebody else right now that you think will dig it. And remember, the blog is a free service, so that's how I ask you to pay it back. If you'd like to give a donation, no amount is too small, even $5 of currency. My Venmo at Matthew hyphen in the middle, Lawton, Lauten, two T's in the Matthew. My Cash App is $ Matthew Lawton, all one word, Lauten. Thank you all. The people who have given any donations, I appreciate you. I know there's some repeat donors too, and I really appreciate that. Like I said, it cost me some money to actually put the blog out for you all, so it's wonderful to get a little bit back to help defray some of those costs. And also, the best way you guys can always help me is when you're ready for an astrological reading, your natal chart, your predictive for the year, children's chart, relationship chart, any specific questions, elections, things like that. Check my website out, www.astrologicalwinds.com. Um, I've been doing charts for over 20 years, probably have over 1,000 satisfied customers. Would love to do that for you. Your chart never leaves you. You need to invest in that, and you need to have a pro do it. If not me, someone else, not a computer, not a book, not a friend who dabbles. Get it? It's something that never leaves you. You can be so much more self-empowered and self-fulfilled in your life if you can work with your energies properly. And I think if it's your birthday month, and you want a natal reading or a predictive reading or both, I do give 10% off. I definitely recommend you get a predictive every year for yourself so you see how the stars are hitting you. But like all that stuff's available on my website. If you're aspiring student. I have some beginner classes on podcasts. I'm also looking for students to maybe do a live beginners class. I need to have a certain amount to do that. Also, if you have a group and you want a class, a lecture, a workshop, mini readings, things like that, that can even be done in Zoom. Please check my website out. I do that too. Thank you all for checking in again. Thank you all for spreading the word of the blog around. Thank you all. Any of you have been customers or donors. Blog's been going a long, long time. Really appreciate all of you who follow it. And I will see you all next week. And we'll talk about that full moon in Aries.